In this lesson, we're going to cut a road into the site mesh that we created in the last lesson. Now, before you cut anything out or before you make any modifications, just make sure that your site mesh is looking as how you would like it to be. In other words, if this is the natural state of the land, make sure that there aren't any local changes that you first want to do before you start cutting out all of your other details. So you want to get the groundwork done first and then go and make any refinements so that you don't have to then refine the multiple objects as you cut and split them all apart later on. So I'm pretty happy with how the site is looking. I know it is quite flat in the area that we will be cutting it out. And now what I want to do is turn on the layer that is going to show me where that road is going to be. So we're talking about the road that is leading up to the site, and then especially the driveway that is going to be in that area. So what you want to do at this stage is you want to look at your file, or at least your layer. I'm going to look at it in plan view here, and I'm going to make a copy of it just the way that we did with the contours. So type in Control-V on your keyboard, make a copy, isolate that copy, and now you see that you have an editable spline. You can click on the spline subcategory or option of that, and you can now start to select the splines that you want to use to cut into the site mesh. So this area that we are outlining now is going to be slightly lower than the rest of the site mesh, since it is going to be a road that is cut into the landscape. And I'm going to then just fill in that gap later. So you'll see that this line here that I've just selected, these two, the actual road, it is much higher in density in terms of the number of vertices. So I'm going to want to recreate that in a lower res spline. But anyway, I'm going to keep it there as a reference. Now that I have all of this done, I'm going to type Control-I on my keyboard, selecting the inverse, hitting delete on my keyboard, and now I'm going to start working with these objects. I'm just going to clear a bit of space here. And now what I want to do is I want to start adding a few lines. I'm going to choose a corner and corner initial and drag type. I'm going to snap it onto there to there. And with these lines here, I'm going to rather retrace them to be at a lower density. So I'm going to just have an ordinary corner and corner. I'm not going to include any arcs or anything else. And I'm just going to vary the density based on how the curve is turning. So here I'm busy zooming in with my mouse wheel, and I'm using I on the keyboard to pan around. You will notice that you can't pan around in 3ds Max the way you do in AutoCAD, so you will then just have to pan manually. So I'm just going to do the same thing to the other side, and this will be done quite soon. You can see that the resolution is going to be really low, but I think it is enough because we're not going to be focusing that many views on this angle of the house. It is the back, it's the entrance. Most of the views that we're going to do are going to be from this side. So I'm going to make sure that the house looks much better and is detailed more than what is happening here in the background. So next I want to select the original CAD geometry. I want to delete these two high detailed lines, and I want to now right click attach, and I'm going to start attaching these lines that I have now manually drawn in. You also have one last one here that you could go and do. So let's quickly go and add that line. It can be a straight line, since I think that we have the walkway that goes up to the front of the house there, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to select my line, right click, attach, select that all, and I'm now going to just select all of these vertices. You can even go Control-A and then just scroll down and weld everything together, making sure that your amount here is not too large, otherwise you will lose any lines that are far away, that are not meant to be welded. So if everything is correct, one last thing that we can do is we can go and join this together so that we can make a solid object. In most cases, if you're not going to be working with a Boolean extraction, you can leave it as it is. So let's isolate that back. We can also now convert this new line that we've drawn to the site mesh layer so that we can turn off our CAD geometry, and we can now work with this object. I'm going to just move it slightly down. I'm going to now extrude it. So just add the extrude modifier. Make sure that you give it a high enough number so that it clearly goes through the site mesh. And once you're ready with that, then you want to go across to your compound objects. I generally like to use the Boolean and refine. You can also use split, but I just have more luck using refine. And I'm now going to pick the operand B, being this one. I'm not worried about the materials at the moment. And once that is done, I'm going to just convert this down to a plain editable poly, select polygon, and now you generally, if you are lucky, you will get all of these polys being selected if you have a full solid object that you are booleaning. Otherwise, you will then manually have to go and select these objects, which can sometimes be a pain, especially if you have a very complex road system. So do try and get your object to be booleaned in such a way that when you do convert it to an editable poly and you select the polygon, that automatically all of the booleaned object polys become highlighted in red. So it is much better to have it done that way. If you do have to select everything manually, it does help to use the spray paint selection method, and just make sure that you have a select object here, and then you can just manually spray in the selection. So I'm going to just pause the video here while I select the rest of the objects, and then you will just see what we do thereafter. So now I've gone and selected all of the remaining polys, so everything is done, and I can now go and either detach this object or I can extrude it straight down. So this is again up to you. There will be many splits along the workflow path where you can choose to go either one way or another. I like to keep things quite simple by detaching it, meaning that I can texture it individually. Otherwise you'll have to make much more complex textures for yourself, which is obviously your choice depending on your preferred method of work. So I'm going to go and detach this, and the other great thing by detaching it is that I now still retain that border that I can now use to create things like pavement edges. So once it is detached, you can go and move it slightly downwards. So let's say we would like to have a 150 millimeter difference in height. So I've just moved that down by 0.15, and you can go and take that edge that we have selected earlier, that outside, and you can go and add a little pavement edge to that by either holding down Shift and dragging it upwards and then just snapping it onto this, or what you can do if you would like to have a little bit more control is you can go and create a shape from that selection. You could have also, of course, kept that spline that you cut into that mesh as a duplicate object and then just used that spline to go and create an edge. But the great thing is here that now you are working with a spline that is correct in 3D. So it isn't exactly the same spline that we used when we cut it. So that is why extracting a spline out of this road edge now allows you to have a single spline object that you can add a sweep modifier onto, and that can now then become your pavement edge that you have full control over. So you can see here we now have a bar object. I'm going to be able to control that height of it. So let's say I want something that is going to be 15 centimeters high, and I would like to smooth it along its path. I don't need to smooth the section, and I don't need to bank it, and I then just need to select the area where it is being swept along. So again, you can now add a few more moves along the plane, so you can either move it slightly outwards, you can make it slightly higher if you would like that pavement edge to overlap. And the beauty of this is that you have full control over your pavement edge, and I really like this compared to just using an extruded object, because now you have a separate object, you can texture it separately, you can go and add a bevel to the edge here if you'd like by selecting the edge, by looping that, and then just right clicking and chamfering. So you pretty much are dealing with this as a separate object that you can manipulate in any way you like. So there we have our pavement edge. That pretty much brings us to the end of this lesson where we've cut in that road for ourselves. And the next lesson we'll look at a few more details that we're going to cut into the site mesh before we go and start modeling the building itself.